This is a podcast by the Straits Times.
Hello and welcome to Pop Vouchers, a pop culture podcast by the Straits Times. My name is Jen Lee, and today I'll be starting a new series called How Did We Get Here? And before we dive into it, I just wanted to give you a little explainer of what it's about. If any of you followed my year-long series called Can I Tell You Something Crazy previously, you'll know that I love diving into Asian entertainment history, and that series was focused on major entertainment stories of the past, like the Edison Chen sex scandal or the suicide of Leslie Cheung. Now, this new series will be a little bit similar, but instead of focusing on major news stories or scandals, it will instead focus on perhaps a particular star, a particular drama, or a band, and look at the trajectory of how they got to where they are now. And for the first episode, I decided to focus on the cast of a truly seminal drama and possibly my first ever drama obsession as a 6-year-old kid because, wow, a lot of things have happened to the main cast of this drama. So without further ado, let's dive in. If the opening notes of that song triggered a core memory in you, then you already know what I'm going to talk to you about today. The period Chinese drama My Fair Princess or Huan Zhu Ge Ge, which aired 2 seasons from 1998 to 1999, is set in the Qing dynasty. The mostly fictional story follows the Qing Emperor Qianlong's illegitimate daughter Ziwei trying to reunite with her father after the death of her mother. And to do so, she goes to the capital city and becomes friends with this feisty young woman nicknamed Little Swallow or Xiaoyanzi, who grew up as an orphaned street urchin. And in trying to help her friend meet the emperor, Xiaoyanzi accidentally gets mistaken as Ziwei and is taken into the palace and treated like a princess. And Ziwei becomes Xiaoyanzi's palace maid instead. Suffice to say, hijinks and royal romance ensues for both women. This drama was at one time and for a long time after the most famous, the most popular Chinese language drama in possibly the entire world. To call it a breakout or a runaway hit would be an understatement. You had to be alive and cognizant in the late 90s to remember this, but it was an unprecedented hit that made household names of its main cast of Vicki Zhao, Ruby Lin, Alec Su, Zhou Jie, Fan Bingbing, and to a lesser extent Julian Chen, who only appeared in the first season. And it wasn't just a hit in China, Taiwan, and Hong Kong, right? It was a hit everywhere people spoke Chinese and more. It was extremely popular in Thailand, in Vietnam, in South Korea, and of course Singapore, and even Chinese communities in Europe and North America watched it as well. And at one point, its viewership in China reportedly reached over 65% of audience share. That's like 65% of people watching TV in China at the time were watching Huan Zhu Ge Ge. And to this day, reruns of it still top viewership records. Now, more than 2 decades on, almost to the date actually, 26 years after it first aired, a lot has happened to the main cast. 2 have been effectively cancelled by the Chinese government. 1 has apparently become a very successful farmer. 1 is still very active in Taiwanese entertainment. And 1 quite literally got burnt. So, how did we get here? Now, for the purposes of this podcast, I know that there are 3 seasons to Huan Zhu Ge Ge, or at least the very first iteration of it. I personally watched all 3 seasons, but the first 2 seasons are much more famous than the third because they were made back-to-back with the original cast, and the third season was mostly recast with new actors. So for the purposes of today, I will be focusing on the cast of the first 2 seasons. Now, before I break down the twists and turns in the lives of the main cast, it's good to contextualize the making of the drama just a little bit. My Fair Princess, or Huan Zhu Ge Ge as it was called, is a mostly Chinese production with some key Taiwanese cast members. So it is an adaptation of a Qiong Yao novel. And Qiong Yao is actually a woman I might do an episode on someday. She is a Taiwanese novelist. A lot of her works have been adapted. And a lot of her work is about romantic love. Adaptations of her work at one point were almost a genre, and people who starred in them got really famous from them. And some of the most famous film stars, like Bridget Lin or Ling Qingxia, got their starts in Qiong Yao adaptations. In fact, Bridget Lin's first ever acting credit was in this film called Chuang Wai, about a young woman who falls in love with a teacher, which is a Qiong Yao adaptation. So, Qiong Yao was very in vogue in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, although her works have really kind of fallen out of favor in recent years because, well, Qiong Yao is in her 80s now. She was of a different time, so the sort of romance and ideas depicted in her stories can all seem very dated now. But at the time, she wrote the script for My Fair Princess, and from what I can gather, she seemed to be very involved, or at least consulted on the casting of the series. And the cast that the public have come to know today is actually a little bit incidental and went through many switcheroos. Just to give you an idea, Vicki Zhao, who played Xiaoyanzi, was originally meant to play Ziwei, and Xiaoyanzi was meant to be played by another Taiwanese actress who turned down the role to be in the Jackie Chan movie, which I have to say is a very fair decision at the time. You know, no one knew how big My Fair Princess would get. And Ziwei, who was played by Ruby Lin, was originally meant to be played by Vicki Zhao instead. And I believe at one point, Fan Bingbing, who ended up playing Ziwei's servant Jing Suo, was actually offered the role of Ziwei as well. And the change from princess to servant reportedly made the then 16-year-old Fan Bingbing quite miffed. But anyway, Ruby Lin, who was originally meant to play a much smaller role as Princess Saya, this character who only appears near the end of the first series and is not in the second season at all. So Ruby Lin really lucked out getting Ziwei in the end because she ended up being one of the two female leads. Now, Kang, a nobleman who falls in love with Ziwei in the series, was supposed to be played by the hit 80s Taiwanese boy band trio Little Tigers or Xiao Hu Dui's Nikki Wu Qilong. But then Nikki Wu had to go and serve time in the military, as Taiwanese men also have mandatory military service like Singapore, so he was conscripted and he had to pass on the role, and it went to the Chinese actor Zhou Jie instead. But the two other members of Xiao Hu Dui Little Tigers, Alec Su and Julian Chen, Su Youpeng and Chen Zhipeng, did in fact get cast. So Alec Su played the fifth prince, also known as Wu Ge or Yongqi, and the fifth prince is the one who falls in love with Xiaoyanzi. And Julian Chen played Kang's younger brother Tai, and the character does appear in the first season but does not appear in the second season. And in 1997, when the project began filming, Little Tigers had been disbanded for around 6 years. So this wasn't Alec Su and Julian Chen doing a drama after a hot streak as teen idols. They had both been struggling to find the same relevance and popularity they had in the 80s as solo artists. So at the point that this project was shot, no one really had any expectations that it would do such incredible numbers. And it was made on a very modest budget with relatively unknown actors like Vicki Zhao and Ruby Lin, or at the very least, rookie actors in the case of people like Alec Su. But obviously, the drama went to air and it was a major hit. The magnitude of how big this drama was is almost unexplainable. As I mentioned at one point on Hunan TV, it reached 65% of audience share. That's 65% of people who are watching TV watching Huan Zhu Ge Ge. And China is a huge country, right? So these are crazy numbers. These are numbers that were and are unthinkable, and they have apparently yet to be topped. So after the drama blew up, the cast and crew very quickly got to work making a second season with a bigger budget and with 48 episodes this time, which is twice as many episodes as the first season. And one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this drama is also because, in many ways, this drama was sort of a prelude to idol dramas before what is generally considered the first idol drama of Chinese language entertainment, which is Meteor Garden. Now, the definition of idol dramas is admittedly very nebulous, but generally speaking, they are dramas that are usually romantic or with very heavy romantic undertones. and they star up-and-coming actors or young people in their 20s or at most early 30s, and they are usually made specifically to cater to a young and perhaps mostly female crowd in their 20s or below. And they are also, to some extent, made with the idea of either building a fan base for its main cast or leveraging the fan base of a certain cast member. And nowadays, idol dramas like, for example, The Untamed and Love Between Fairy and Devil are the mainstream genres of dramas coming out of Chinese language entertainment. But at the time that My Fair Princess was made, the idea of idol dramas didn't really exist. You had political or historical dramas that were pretty serious, or you had soap operas, or you had these really melodramatic romances that were not specifically made in service of a young 20-ish audience. And My Fair Princess had a lot of elements of idol dramas. It featured young, attractive actors, some of whom were previously actually idols, like Alec Su and Julian Chen. Romance obviously was a big part of the story, and while the drama and the cast and crew did not anticipate this, it did skyrocket its main cast popularity and made them quote-unquote idols with huge fan bases. And Taiwan at the time already had young idols in pop stars like Jimmy Lin and Little Tigers, but for China, Vicki Zhao essentially became China's first idol celebrity and its first sort of 流量明星, as they call it nowadays, which is a term used to describe a celebrity with a very big online following. But of course, in the time of 1998, it was not online, but it was just a very big fan base. And Vicki Zhao's popularity lasted for a long, long time. But her downfall came as abruptly as her rise did. Now, if you're someone who follows Chinese entertainment, you already know that the juiciest cast member stories I'm going to tell are the ones about Vicki Zhao and Fan Bingbing. But I'm going to leave them for the last. I did do some research into all the main cast members after all, and there are interesting and noteworthy things that happened to them. So let's go one by one, starting with, unfortunately, possibly the least conventionally successful member of the main cast. So Julian Chen Zhipeng, who, by the way, really looks like Leslie Cheung, played Cai in the series, and as I mentioned, he's not in the second season, and he is one of the few main cast members of the first series who simply did not break out the same way his co-stars did. And he's one of those stars who had a really great beginning to his career with Xiaohu Dui with Little Tigers, but life really got in his way. As I mentioned, his role was written out at the end of the first series. Cai marries a foreign princess and goes to live on foreign land. So the momentum that the rest of the cast got with 2 series back-to-back, that just didn't apply for him. But he was actually cast in his first lead role in a drama a few years after Huan Zhu Ge Ge. But while filming the project in 2001, he had to act in a scene of an explosion, and the explosive didn't function properly, and it blew up in his face, and it burnt his face. So he had to do skin grafts, and he had to stop working for a while to recover, and he apparently had to do some work to his face. And people really criticized him for this at the time because he kept it quite low profile. He didn't really announce the fact that he was injured at work until quite a while later. And at the time, plastic surgery was and still, I think is, even now, a little bit frowned upon. So even though he did later explain his circumstances of what happened, he just kind of never struck gold again. And in recent years, in 2020, he did take part in one of those Chinese reality competitions where established stars compete and try to debut in an idol group. So this program was called Shine Super Brothers or 追光吧哥哥. And it did give him a very brief revival, but the hype has really died down since then. In comparison, his Little Tigers bandmate, Alec Su, had a much luckier turn. He became super popular with My Fair Princess, and then he followed it up with another Qianlong series called Romance in the Rain, 情深深雨蒙蒙, which also starred Vicki Zhao and Ruby Lin, because Qianlong loves using the same actors over and over again. He was also in really popular period dramas like the Louis Cha wuxia adaptation, Heavenly Sword and Dragon Saber, and he acted opposite famous South Korean actresses in romance series like Love of the Aegean Sea and My Mischievous Princess. So he was booked and busy for a really, really long time. One interesting fact I have to mention about Alec Su is that he has a very famous fan. The Chinese democracy protest leader Wang Dan, who took part in the Tiananmen Square protest that led to a massacre. Wang Dan was arrested after the 1989 protest, and during his time in prison, what got him through was watching the little tigers. So he was a big fan of Xiao Dui, and apparently his favorite was Alec Su Peng. And this is something Alec Su has actually acknowledged, and he even said in an episode of a variety show once that he wrote a letter to Wang Dan at one point. And this is just crazy for me to think about because you would never be able to acknowledge or talk about that if you wanted to work in China today. The Chinese entertainment scene now is so much more punishing and so much more harsh than in the 90s and the early 2000s, especially with political issues. You have to toe the party line if you want to work in China now. And I cannot fathom anyone who wants a career, much less the very successful career that Alec Su had, talking as openly as he did about his dissident fan. But anyway, to go back to his career, Alec Su later on pivoted away from television to film. And aside from starring in films, he directed a few movies like The Left Ear in 2015 and The Devotion of Suspect X in 2017 to some success. The Left Ear even nabbed him a Golden Horse nomination for Best New Director, although he ultimately didn't win. Then I think he sort of just pulled back from acting and directing, and he became quite quiet. I think he was probably just enjoying his life since he had been successful for a long time, until he mounted this really major comeback with a Chinese reality competition, just like Julian Chen. These competitions have been trendy for the past couple of years, and he took part in something quite similar to Shine Super Brothers. Alec Su was in Call Me By Fire in 2022, 披荆斩棘的哥哥. And he also got a little bit of a career revival from that was enough for him to be currently touring Chinese cities for concerts. So that's good for him. Now we move on to Ruby Lin and Zhou Jie, who played a couple in the series, but have a little bit of a complicated history in the public eye. That is not to say that they dated, but rather the trajectories of their careers and reputations are somewhat tied to each other. Look, Ruby Lin is a very successful and prolific actress and producer. So after My Fair Princess, she did a lot of roles, but in particular, Beauty's rival in the palace, 美人心计, did very well and was one of the highest rated Chinese dramas of 2010. And following that, Ruby Lin also became a very successful producer. So she acts in a lot of the dramas that she produces. And some of the most popular Taiwanese series in recent years, like the Night, 华灯初上, have been produced by Ruby Lin and also stars her as the lead actress. And in some ways, it feels like she is nowadays a bit more known as a producer because the works that she produces are actually very acclaimed. She is also, and this is a side note, known for loving handsome men. She has always referred to herself as someone who cares a lot about looks. She always says, I want to marry a really handsome guy. And it's a little bit of a running joke online, at least on the Chinese internet, that she always casts really good-looking men to play her romantic interests in series whenever she's producing. This is very funny, but it is also true. And you know what? She did marry a very good-looking man in the Taiwanese actor, Wallace Huo. So the two of them tied a knot in 2016 in a little bit of a surprise move because she announced that they were dating and then 2 months later they got married. And the couple have a daughter who was born in 2017. Now, there are periodically divorce rumors that pop up about them, but so far they are still together. And you would think that given everything I've told you about her, things seem to be going really swimmingly well for her. And I have no doubt that she's very happy and she's very successful, but as someone who spends a lot of time on the Chinese internet, I can tell you that she is not well liked by Chinese netizens. There are a variety of factors. People believe that she is a proponent of Taiwanese independence, and that is something that will get you cancelled by Chinese netizens who believe that Taiwan is not a sovereign country, but rather a part of China. She has actually never professed her support for Taiwanese independence, as far as I know. Very few celebrities do that because it is a very sensitive topic and a lot of them don't want to close themselves off to opportunities from the Chinese market. But this is a narrative about her that I see a lot on the Chinese internet. But another one of the reasons why she is disliked is because people feel that she has maliciously maligned Zhou Jie, her former co-star. Now, because the two of them acted as a couple in My Fair Princess, they had some kiss scenes in the series. And my god, they are very long and dramatic kissing scenes where like the camera swivels around the couples as they kiss, it's very dated looking. But anyway, a few years after the series aired, Ruby Lin was a guest on the variety talk show 康熙来了, which is known in English as Mr. Connor Miss C, and it's hosted by Di Xu and Kevin Tsai. And it is an episode in 2004, which is within the first year after 康熙来了 started. And in that episode, they talked about filming My Fair Princess, Huan Zhu Ge Ge, and Ruby Lin talked very openly about Zhou Jie's style of acting. Between her and the host, they made jokes and kind of implied that Zhou Jie is the kind of person who will try to steal the scenes in certain takes. But that's not all. The one detail that went really viral after the episode was this one part in the episode where the host, Di Xu Xiaoyanzi, was asking her a question about how it is like to film kissing scenes. And Di Xu asked, have you ever filmed a scene with an actor who tried to French kiss you with tongue? And Ruby Lin goes, no, actors don't do that usually. And then Di Xu goes, not even urchin, who is played by Zhou Jie. And Ruby Lin just goes, I closed my mouth really tight. And Di Xu asks again, did he try to stick his tongue out? And Ruby Lin again just repeats, well, my mouth was closed really tight. And as the conversation goes on, she admits that he's the only co-star of hers who has ever tried to kiss her with tongue. But she quickly laughs it off and says, you know what, I don't think he meant to do it intentionally. He's just really immersed in the emotions and drama. Now we can listen to a clip of what she says here.
所以10个里面一共有几个曾经顶过你的牙齿？
就一个吧，尔康啊。其实人家不是故意想顶啊，人家可能太投入，对。尔康太热爱戏剧了，我们只能这样说。
This exchange to a lot of netizens unfortunately became proof that Zhou Jie is unprofessional, forceful, and maybe even a little bit pervy, like he's trying to take advantage of these female stars that he's working with. And Zhou Jie did not really respond to this at the time, but his image took a hit after this episode. And over the years, he has made multiple references to it, which suggests to me that he's really hung up and sore that Ruby Lin said something like that about him. Now, 康熙来了 is probably one of the most successful variety talk shows in the Chinese-speaking world. So when you say or do something on 康熙来了, it kind of haunts you forever. And this exchange has followed both of these stars to this day. I saw an interview with Ruby Lin this year where she was once again asked about this. And I honestly don't think Ruby Lin was particularly malicious on this episode. I've seen it a few times over the years. And the thing with 康熙来了 is that yes, it is a talk show, but it is very lighthearted, very funny, and very unserious. It is the kind of show where political figures, Taiwanese political figures like Ma Ying-jeou and Lian Zhan would go on and Di Xu would ask them questions like, what kind of underwear do you wear? It's very informal, it's very casual, and it's the kind of show where people say and do things to be funny or for comedic effect. And I don't think Ruby Lin was lying about what happened with Zhou Jie, but I would say that sometimes people have very different acting styles, and at the time, there were probably nothing like intimacy coaches, so it was probably an issue of expectations in their style of acting not being aligned and not being communicated well. Now, at the time of this episode's airing, social media was also not yet popular and not used as widely as it is now. So this whole, Zhou Jie tried to kiss Ruby Lin with tongue thing didn't become a trending topic on Weibo because Weibo just wasn't a thing yet. It hadn't been founded at the time. And related to that, celebrities were also not as accessible to their fans as they are now. And the zeitgeist was just something that one could not get a feel of as quickly as they can now. So I don't think Ruby Lin realized at the time how much this exchange would impact Zhou Jie negatively or how long it would follow the both of them for. Now in the 2000s, Zhou Jie also suffered some really bad press. So there was news that he got into a scuffle and he hit a security guard. There was also a separate car crash incident that was initially characterized as a hit and run, with Zhou Jie being the one running away. Now he denies that he ever hit the security guard, and he denies that he ran away after his car accident. But coupled with the whole, is Zhou Jie a little bit of a perv thing, he kind of really fell out of public favor and stopped filming as much. I think in part is because he wasn't getting as many roles, and in part was also because he was feeling quite frustrated with the way that people were talking about him. And instead, he bought some land and became an organic farmer, and is apparently doing quite well in the organic farming scene. Now, over the years, Ruby Lin has also suffered some bad press, particularly in China, for reasons such as her political stance being doubted, as I mentioned just now. There are also some fans who dislike her because she married Wallace Huo, who has a lot of female fans. And also, this incident on 康熙来了 has been revisited and relitigated because a lot of people feel like Ruby Lin never took accountability for casually ruining Zhou Jie's reputation. Now, in her defense, I would say, she has in later years explained that she never felt violated by him, and it was just a matter of everyone being very young and very new to acting and not very familiar with it yet. But a lot of netizens feel like if she didn't feel too bad about what happened, she should have come out a lot faster and a lot stronger to shut down rumors that Zhou Jie was behaving inappropriately. There is, of course, also an underlying tension here because Zhou Jie is from mainland China and Ruby Lin is from Taiwan. And over the years, I have seen rumors and speculation that the Taiwanese actors of Huan Zhu Ge Ge were a little bit cliquey and they excluded Zhou Jie and so on. Now, obviously, I don't know the truth of what went down, but I would say Alec Su, Ruby Lin, the Taiwanese actors, as well as Vicki Zhao and Fan Bingbing, who are from mainland China, have interacted over the years, and both Vicki Zhao and Fan Bingbing attend Ruby Lin's wedding. And Zhou Jie, in comparison, just does not seem as close to the rest of the cast members in general, not just the Taiwanese cast, but everyone in the cast. Which is not to say that I think he's a bad person or anything, but that is just something that has happened. In any case, both Ruby Lin and Zhou Jie are very much around. Both of them seem to be doing very well for themselves. Obviously, Ruby Lin has a much more vibrant and prolific career in entertainment, but Zhou Jie has pivoted away from acting and public appearances. Of course, all of these stories pale in comparison to what happened with Fan Bingbing and Vicki Zhao. The biggest, most international, and most famous star to come out of My Fair Princess, Huan Zhu Ge Ge, was not any of the four leads. Instead, it was the girl who played Ziwei's maid, Jing Suo, Fan Bingbing. Perhaps it should come as no surprise. With snow-white fair skin, jet black hair, and this big doll-like eyes, Fan Bingbing is stunning. And after My Fair Princess, she worked very steadily and found prominence with film roles like Cell Phone, which was the highest grossing film of 2003 in China. And she had a lot of domestic success. She starred in many Chinese films like Lost in Beijing, Buddha Mountain, and Double Exposure, and also starred in period television series like The Empress of China, Wu Zetian, Wu Meiniang. And she was also one of the only cast members to seriously venture overseas. She was in the Hollywood movie X-Men Days of Future Past. She was also in the Korean film My Way. And she played a role in the Chinese theater cut version of Iron Man 3. But beyond her acting, she was also one of the few Chinese stars to be known throughout the world as a fashion icon. I've followed red carpet commentary since I was a teenager, and there are few things that excite a red carpet commentator more than a Fan Bingbing appearance. This woman just knows how to create a fashion moment, and she loved to incorporate these traditional Chinese elements with high fashion and couture. So she made headlines with this orange dress with a dragon on it at Cannes. She also once wore this dress inspired by a porcelain vase and had the stories of China's four ancient beauties, 四大美女, embroidered on them to the Cannes Film Festival. She wore this cape inspired by stained glass art to the Met Gala. So, coupled with her very gorgeous looks and often very bold styling in hair and jewelry, she was the film industry's fashion it girl. By 2014, she was reportedly the highest paid actress in the world, and she was consecutively topping Forbes China's list of celebrities, and even once made it onto Time magazine's list of 100 most influential people. And then, in 2018, she disappeared.
X-Men star Fan Bingbing's Beijing management office is abandoned. The famous Chinese star hasn't been seen or heard from in months, and her recent birthday passed almost unremarked on social media. Fan's vanishing comes amid vague allegations of tax fraud and possibly other infractions that may have put her at odds with Chinese authorities.
A
person with such a big fan base, fame, high income, and strong influence, one who seems so rich has actually gone missing in modern China in 2018, in an open China. This is a problem in itself.
Yes, in June of 2018, Fan Bingbing, possibly one of the most famous and photographed actresses in Chinese entertainment, seemingly fell off the face of the earth amid reports that she was involved in an investigation into tax evasion in the Chinese film industry. From June to October, Fan Bingbing was gone. No social media posts, no sightings, her Beijing office was abandoned, her lawyers were clueless about her whereabouts. And obviously, this sparked wild speculation. Some thought she was detained, some wondered if she had been killed, and everyone believed that she had gotten into trouble with the Chinese authorities, which is not particularly known for open lines of communication or transparency. So after these months of confusion and speculation and worry from Fan Bingbing's fans, on October 3, 2018, China's state news agency Xinhua reported that authorities have ordered Fan Bingbing to pay about 884 million yuan in overdue taxes and fines. 884 million yuan. That is over 170 million Sing dollars in taxes and fines. So this is not what she was earning. This is what she owed in taxes and what the authorities fined her for owing the taxes for so long. So can you imagine how much money she was earning? And Fan Bingbing reportedly engaged in the not uncommon practice of yin-yang contracts. It's not uncommon, but it is illegal. It is essentially having two different contracts. So you have one contract, for example, that says you're paid 10 million for this movie, and that's the contract that's, out in the open, and you pay taxes for that 10 million income that you got. But actually, under the table, there's another contract, a real one, that says you are actually paid 100 million. So you have evaded paying taxes for 90 million. Now, Fan Bingbing came out with an apology on the same day, admitting to tax evasion. She admitted to her crimes. She promised to pay back what she owed, and she promised to pay the fines. To this day, however, no one knows what happened to her or where she went in the over 3 months that she disappeared. This obviously had a huge impact on her career and her life. She was replaced and dropped from several projects, and a lot of projects that were supposed to star her in the lead were delayed. She broke up with her fiancé, this Chinese actor called Li Chen. But for someone who was so openly named and shamed by Chinese authorities, I would say that Fan Bingbing has bounced back remarkably well. She is still, I would say, quote-unquote, banned in China, and I put it in quotes because she is active on the Chinese internet. She's active on Xiaohongshu and Douyin and Weibo, so I wouldn't consider her completely banned, but she simply doesn't act in China anymore, at least not in mainland China. She now has her own beauty brand called Fun Beauty Secrets. She is a big fashion darling. She appeared at the Oscars last year, not for any movie. She was just an attendee in a beautiful outfit. She appears on magazine covers, and she does still act occasionally, although in projects outside of mainland China. She did a Korean movie that aired at Singapore International Film Festival where we interviewed her. She was also in an episode of a K-drama recently, and she attended Songkran celebrations in Thailand recently as well. So even though she is somewhat cancelled in the sense that she can no longer film television and movie projects in mainland China, at the very least, she is out in public, she seems fine, people know what she is doing. The same cannot exactly be said for Vicki Zhao. When people think of Huan Zhu Ge Ge, people think of Xiaoyanzi. And when people think of Xiaoyanzi, people think of Vicki Zhao. There is simply no question there may be 4 main characters in Huan Zhu Ge Ge, but Xiaoyanzi is the heart and soul of this drama. And it is no wonder that the biggest initial breakout of the cast was Vicki Zhao. The series shot her to fame and paved the way for a very successful career for her in acting. She's in the very beloved Stephen Chow comedy Shaolin Soccer. She's in period films like Red Cliff and Painted Skin, and she also took part in variety shows like Chinese Restaurant. But looking back, I have to say there are a few scandals in her early career that I cannot quite believe she managed to survive and weather. For example, in 2001, she was in a fashion editorial shoot in an outfit that had a pattern very similar to Japan's rising sun flag. I've seen the photo before, and there is no doubt here, the pattern is indeed extremely similar to the flag. No one is nitpicking here. The rising sun flag is not the official Japanese flag that we know, the one that's white with a bright red circle. The rising sun flag has red rays coming out of the circle to signify, well, a rising sun. And it is very controversial because it is associated with Japanese war crimes. And anyone who knows history knows China suffered greatly at the hands of Japan during World War II, and to this day, there is a lot of lingering discontent and even hatred, I would say, among Chinese people for Japan. So this is a very, very sensitive issue, and Vicki Zhao was immediately criticized for this fashion shoot, and I believe the surviving children of the victims of the Nanking massacre even wrote an open letter to her about this and asked her for an apology. Eventually, she did apologize, both in an open letter and in a television program as well. And a few weeks after the fashion shoot came out, she was performing in the Chinese city of Changsha when a man rushes up on stage, pushes her down, and splashes her with feces. The man claimed to do it because he had family members who died at the hands of the Japanese during World War II, and he was very angry with Vicki Zhao for making this mistake. But a report published later found that this man was apparently lying about a lot of what he said and that he had very extremist views. There's more to this flag incident, but I'm not going to go into the entirety of it. This can be an episode in and of itself one day, but suffice to say, it definitely did impact Vicki Zhao's career negatively, but not to the point that she can no longer work. And that is what I want to talk about, because that is crazy when you consider how severely Chinese celebrities are punished now if they are seen to be crossing the line on certain political matters. I mean, 2 decades after Vicki Zhao, Chinese actor Zhang Zhehan, who by the way was signed under Vicki Zhao's management agency, was cancelled and is still very much cancelled for taking a picture with sakura trees in front of a building that is allegedly Japan's Yasukuni Shrine. And Yasukuni Shrine is controversial because it memorializes those who died in service of war for Japan, including some war criminals of World War II. So imagine how bad it would be if a rising actress, a young starlet, was seen in a fashion shoot wearing the rising sun flag on her body. Imagine how grave a mistake that would be now. She will never be seen again. And amazingly, this is not the only scandal she survived. In 2017, Vicki Zhao and her businessman husband, Huang Youlong, by the way, they are a very rich couple. They are a billionaire couple, and they own a vineyard in France that exports wine. The couple were banned by China's Securities Regulatory Commission from trading on the Shanghai market for 5 years. And in 2018, Vicki Zhao herself was banned from holding any senior position in a listed company in China for 5 years as well. According to Variety, these punishments apparently relate to a failed 2016 takeover bid announced by Tibet Longwei, which is a company controlled by Vicki Zhao and her husband, to buy over a 29% stake in another company called Zhejiang Wanjia. And apparently they were found to have disrupted market order, this is in quotes, and to have benefited from a, quotation again, celebrity effect when they announced their bid but did not have the financial resources to go through with it. This suggests to me that there's some very shady and suspicious money stuff going on with Vicki Zhao and her husband, but for some reason she managed to continue to work through this scandal with not a lot of issues. Again, this is so wild to me considering how Fan Bingbing was just 1 year later punished for tax evasion to the extent that she was, although she did owe a lot of money in taxes. But Vicki Zhao was essentially accused of manipulating the market and lying, so how did she manage to not get cancelled then? But she does eventually get cancelled for reasons that to this day are still not completely known to us. In August 2021, around the same time that her artist Zhang Zhehan got cancelled for allegedly visiting Yasukuni Shrine, all the films and television dramas featuring Zhao disappeared from Chinese video streaming service. Her Weibo Super Talk, which is a fan page, was deleted. No explanation was given. But unlike the cancellation of other celebrities in China, her Weibo account, so Vicki Zhao's official Weibo account, and the Weibo account of Vicki Zhao's studio were not taken down and were not muted. So it wasn't a very conventional sort of cancellation. Yet, if you went to Baidu Baike, China's version of Wikipedia at the time, her name was essentially scrubbed off all the projects she had done. So for example, the entry on her directorial debut, 2013's So Young, didn't include her name. In the list of awards that So Young was nominated for or won for, there's one that says Best New Director. And when it comes to the name, there was just a dash. The entry didn't name her. The entire Baidu Baike entry did not name Vicki Zhao in her directorial debut. And I just checked, to this day, she's still not named. So this is just very confusing, right? I remember being on the internet at the time that she was being cancelled, and no one knew why this was happening so suddenly. And no one knew why this was happening now after she had already had so much worthy of cancellation and she wasn't cancelled for any of them, and then suddenly now she's cancelled. There was speculation that the cancellation was maybe tied to some of her investments, maybe some of it was suspicious, some of it was illegal of some sort, or there was also speculation that maybe this was all tied to Alibaba's founder Jack Ma, because the couple were apparently on quite tight terms with him, and Jack Ma at the time was also going through some of his own troubles with the Chinese authorities. But simply put, no one knows what happened to this day. No one knows why she was cancelled. And there are no updates on Vicki Zhao's Weibo. She has posted some Instagram stories since 2021. Very few Instagram stories. It's rarely about where she is or what she's doing, but I believe she did post an Instagram story around the time her dad died in 2022. There are also very occasional updates from netizens who maybe spot her somewhere, or there will be netizens, quote unquote, I believe they are actually her staff members or people who are connected to her, uploading pictures of her skiing or something like that. And a very recent update is that in 2024, some people realized that Vicki Zhao is no longer blurred out on streaming sites because, yes, if you are cancelled in China, you get blurred out on variety show episodes. So some people realized, hey, she's no longer getting blurred out. So it sparked some rumors that maybe she's mounting a return. Maybe after this blacklisting of 3 years, she's starting to come back. But then news came out that some shares she's holding are being frozen. So doesn't look like her legal troubles are over yet. I wish I could end on a more definitive note where I can tell you what happened and why, but unfortunately, in the case of Vicki Zhao, I don't have a lot of information to go on. You can, however, catch all the really old, really pixelated and kind of blurry episodes of both seasons of My Fair Princess Huan Zhu Ge Ge on YouTube. As I mentioned, I wanted to do this episode because so much has happened to this cast and so much has happened to the landscape of Chinese entertainment in the time since. The culture and the authorities in China have become very, very punishing for stars who are seen to be not behaving up to standards expected of someone in the public eye. And of course, the idol drama formula that I would say My Fair Princess kind of accidentally stumbled upon is now the norm of dramas in China, to the point that people are actually getting really bored of it. And one of the wildest things to me is that when you search for Huan Zhu Ge Ge, My Fair Princess on Baidu Baike, this drama that was so popular, this drama that is known throughout China, everyone knows this drama, known throughout the Chinese-speaking world, something that I've watched since I was a kid, as a 6-7-year-old kid. When you search Huan Zhu Ge Ge on Baidu Baike, there is not a single mention of Vicki Zhao, Zhao Wei, the Xiaoyanzi that everyone knows and loves. She is gone, she is erased, it's as if she never even existed. And that's something you can check right now if you went on Baidu Baike. No mention of this woman. And with that, we have come to the end of the first episode of How Did We Get Here? And just like, can I tell you something crazy? If you've made it this far, I just want to say that these episodes take a lot of effort, they take a lot of time, and I would really appreciate any encouragement and constructive feedback that you have for me. Do send any ideas or thoughts about what you want me to cover. Do you want me to cover F4, Meteor Garden, Fahrenheit? What do you want me to do? At jenli@sph.com.sg or podcast@sph.com.sg, or you can always slide into my DMs on Instagram @jenliwrites. Stay tuned, I'm your host Jen Li, and thank you for listening.
Send your feedback to podcast@sph.com.sg. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or within our Straits Times app. Thanks for listening.